Hey, Virtual Mom Squad. We're back with another Bad Blind Moms episode. I am Bridgit Kenning Peter.
And I'm Stacy Cervenka. And we are two blind moms trying our best and getting it wrong every day.
For sure.
And today we are joined by a badass blind mom, Denna Lambert. So, hey, Denna.
Yay. Hey, ladies.
How are you?
I am good. Surviving. We made it through the week.
That's all.
Yes.
You know, as a mom, that's all you can hope for.
Exactly.
Denna, can you tell us about yourself? A little bit about who you are, what you do, what you like.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'm originally from Arkansas. So you may hear some twang here and there. But I'm now in the DC area, so now I have to be proper. And that's what I do. But I'm from Arkansas. I grew up and raised, and I am also blind, i.e. why I'm here. And I have a 20-month-old son named Kaleb. I work for the federal government, actually a pretty cool agency. Some people may know it as NASA. I'm a project manager there, sometimes pushing paper, counting beans sometimes. And yeah, I just surviving through the pandemic. For fun, let's see, what is fun? Some moms would say folding laundry, washing dishes. That would be the thing lately. But before that, I was a Girl Scout troop leader and robotics coach, and I got a chance to travel to some other countries. All the cool things that I can tell Kaleb when he gets older. That I had a
fun.
I often think that, like, I spent my 20s going all over the world, and now I barely leave Lincoln. Like, it's a totally different life. It's like a different person.
Oh yeah. The world got much, much, much smaller.
Much smaller.
I'm hoping to make it much bigger, but we gotta go through steps. Yes.
Right. It'll expand. Well, so to get into it, so one thing we're talking about with Denna tonight is Denna happens to be an adoptive mom. So Denna, to get into it, why did you decide to pursue adoption, and did you have any concerns going into it?
Oh my goodness. I would say, how, like, for me, so I'm single and I'm turning 40 this year. Woohoo! And so around like 28, when I turned 28, there was like no inkling that I wanted to be a mom. And then a lot of my friends started to get married and have kids. And of course, our relationships changed. We were no longer, sipping on wine on a work night, anymore, having Bible studies while sipping wine. Hey, well, that's another show. But I started, having those really deep thoughts of, hey, I would really like to have, a family of my own. And at one of my checkups with my gynecologist, he's like, are you thinking of having a family? And at this point, I'm 35. And I was like, well, I don't know. He said, well, you might want to consider freezing your eggs because you're turning geriatric. I was like, what? I'm not old, but as far as having a child,
if you're geriatric, then I'm already 40, so then I'm number. Like fossilized or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So once we, had the discussion, and I went and I saw a fertility specialist, and those people are no joke. They, going through fertility treatments, or at least the assisted fertility, journey is, that is a whole nother subject. But what I realized is, hey, there's something different out there for me. And I've always wanted to adopt, even when I was a kid. My mom, pursued adoption as an option, when she was wanting to become a mom. So it's just always been there, the thought of, hey, there already could be a child out there that needs a home, and if I have the means and the ability to do it, why not? So that kind of sat better in my soul, if you want to say, or in my spirit, of choosing adoption versus fertility, while those are both equally good means of becoming a mom. You know, we all become moms from a lot of different ways, you know, and adoption was the one for me. So, you know, I started the process back in 2017. And it took almost 2 years to complete the process.
So now, I guess, can you tell us, so how did you decide which adoption agency you wanted to work with? And did your blindness or singleness factor into the decision of who you would work with?
Yeah, so actually, oh my goodness, adoption, particularly like domestic adoption, comes with its own, I don't know if it's called landmines or just things that you should know, but you don't really know until you actually get into it. And so what I did not know, you know, I thought there would be this website that I could go to and, you know, pick a child and that's, you know, that's what we do. But it's the total opposite. And the way that it works is, at least in the domestic adoption world, is that you work with an agency. You, in other ways, you can work with attorneys, but I chose an agency route. And then they work with mothers who are expecting and showing them a wide range of families who are eligible and approved to work with or to go through adoption. So it's essentially, the agency is the first person that introduces you to an expected mom. And I wanted to find an agency that had a positive kind of attitude or understanding of disabilities or people with disabilities, but also people who are blind, because we all know blindness kind of sometimes comes with its own misinformation. So I actually called and I interviewed, you know, some of the agencies in my area. Some of them were like, what? What? You're
and
blind?
When you say in your area, you mean like the Greenbelt, Maryland, DC area?
Well, actually in the DC metro area. So Greenbelt is the city that I live in, which is a suburb of DC. So a lot of people know it as the DMV. So a lot of agencies will work across that kind of not tri-state, but you know, DC,
DMV stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
But also some organizations are very strict in their definition of who is an eligible parent, eligible adoptive parent, and sometimes being single is a characteristic that they, you know, may view as not being eligible. So those were two factors that I really had to kind of be upfront, because if an expected mother sees a profile and she has an initial reaction to the statement in my book that says I'm blind, I want the social worker that's going to be with her to have, you know, a positive reaction, because I'm not there to be able to work out those questions, you know, initially. So I decided to work with an agency who had some experience with working with parents who are deaf, parents who have had mobility related disabilities. They had not at that point worked with someone who was blind, but actually when I started working with them and beginning the process, they were great. They were awesome.
Would you be able to tell us the name of the agency?
Yeah. So I worked with Adoptions Together. And they are located in the DC area, so DC, Maryland, Virginia, but they do partner with other agencies across the country. Now, with adoption, there are two main components, and we can get into that a little bit later, but you have the home study component, which you can start with an agency to do your home study. And that's basically where you're inviting a nice social worker to come into your home and ask all of the most intimate questions. And you have to answer them. And then the second component would be helping with the matching process. So I ultimately was matched with a different agency, but that agency does not do home studies. So I wouldn't have been able to start with them anyways. But Adoptions Together was the first agency, and then Angel Choice Adoption Service in Arkansas was my matching agency, where I was able to be matched with my son's birth mom.
And before you actually selected an agency, and even before you met, anyone, a caseworker to an initial contact, because my husband and I, 2 times were in the beginning process of adoption, and then both times I got pregnant. So
that happens.
Right, yeah. So I'm like, apparently we are not adopting because I don't want to be pregnant again. So because apparently that is the variable that anyway. So but
for some agencies that would
because I spent a lot of time just researching online before we even went around to different agencies to meet with caseworkers. I'm just curious for your process, how many weeks, months, whatever, did you actually spend researching before making that decision?
Oh my goodness. Well, for one, what's really important with adoption is to choose the process that you want to go through. So the ways that people can choose to adopt is through foster care. So that's going through a state agency. So
and that's what Greg and I, we're going to pursue that route. And then I got pregnant, and we still dream and really hope to do that in the future when the kids are maybe both in school.
So actually, the foster care system has its own kind of unique characteristics with it, some of which were a bit I didn't know how I was going to do that as a single mom, because as a blind person you have to think of logistics and some of the requirements for getting children to and from different types of therapies or appointments. And I'm also full-time working. It wasn't quite the choice that sat well with me, even though, again, it's a very good, option. The other option that I could have done is international adoption. And we do find a lot of children who are blind through international adoption. And I kind of felt like, man, I would love to have a blind child. But some of those countries do not offer adoption to single women. So that's, and international adoption is almost twice as much as domestic adoption. So that is a real factor that you have to consider is how much financial support or backing you have for that particular process. So to go to your question, how long did it take? I think I was researching for about a year, maybe in starting in 2016. I thought at first I wanted to go pursue a PhD, but I realized I couldn't go into debt. I'm pursuing a PhD. So I chose a different kind of expense, which was to have a child. So my research phase
and sadly, this won't make you more employable. It'll match.
Right. That's true.
You could have expanded your world, but you chose to shrink it.
Yes. So it took about a year researching. Not to say it has to take that long, but I was also in this phase of wanting to live life. So I had a bucket list of things I wanted to do that I knew would be much harder as a mom. So, that's why I traveled and I, did crazy, assignments, for work and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say in earnest, I would say calling, interviewing, going to information sessions, that probably took 6 months, because again, it's kind of a sobering idea that, wow, there could be a child coming and living in my house.
Yeah.
But yeah, the agency that I went with, they had an information session. I just had a really good, feeling about them. They had a kind of a soup to nuts. I don't know what the right analogy is, but they had a complete kind of offering of starting the process to aftercare, support. And that right now looks like support groups for adopted families or camps for children who are adopted. So that's ultimately also why I chose them, because I wanted, a complete kind of wraparound program for my son, not just when he was a baby to, as a teenager. Because with adoption, it's not just, bringing home a baby, it's being prepared to answer questions related to, well, why am I adopted? Why who are my birth family? Can I have contact with them? All those things that come up at different stages. Yeah, I need help with that.
So tell us a little bit about once you got to your journey with the adoption with the home study, because I'm sure a lot of parents out there are curious. Were you nervous? Were you, particularly when it came to being a blind prospective parent, did you think, what are they going to ask me? What are they gonna look for? I'm sure there was a lot of things going through your head. I'm just curious if you could tell us a little bit about that particular aspect of adoption.
Yeah. So the home study is a requirement by law in most or all of the states. And basically what it is having someone from the agency who can come in, assess you as an individual, the environment that you're living in, your health, your well-being, all of that. So any and every topic is on the table, essentially. And it's different than if you were deciding to become pregnant. That's usually a choice between yourself and your partner, if you have one. But in adoption, you're kind of inviting a social worker, your doctor, and an agency into that conversation, which is kind of weird, but hey. I definitely was worried because we, as blind people, have had different types of experiences with social workers, either having, overly, concerned strangers contacting social service agencies about our ability to care for children, or just the perception that this person is questioning my ability. And that would be true for anyone going through the adoption process, but I know I felt triggered through the whole thing, I remember, having cleaners come to my house and cleaning the whole house before, she came, or, feeling like I needed to have, warm, hot cocoa or cookies, chocolate chip cookies, I thought in my mind I needed to be, Aunt Viv or Mrs. Huxtable, from the Cosby Show, to present this persona. But anyways, so my social worker, she was really nice. I was really stressed out. We talked through the normal questions of, hey, what was your childhood like? What are your thoughts on what your approach is going to be for raising a child? And, it's one of those things of, I think I know I want to raise a child. I know I'm supposed to keep them alive, but an approach, who does that? So I think
and that's, you're right. That's one lucky thing about when you just have a child. Like I read half a book, half a parenting book when I was pregnant with Leo. And I was like, God, this is boring.
Yes.
So you don't have to have an approach. You can just kind of do whatever. Where if you're adopting, I'm sure that you have to be like, well, you see, we're going to use this method, and you know.
Yeah. That's what.
Much more
That's
intentional.
what's really scary, just because I could have decided to go get find a sperm donor, and that was it. But it was a very thoughtful process, because as part of the home study, you have to have 3 references, and these people actually, the social worker called and talked to my references. I think she may have even visited one, and of course I chose my friends and my neighbors, but in that process they had to be honest about their feedback, and they did share their concerns about how I would handle a child, and that brought up a whole nother emotional level. But I'm glad that they felt honest, able to be honest in the process. It did result in us having some conversations as friends, but in a way, looking back, I'm really thankful that we did have those conversations, because what are you gonna do if your child is sick in the middle of the night? And who is on that list that wants to get the call to take me and my son to the hospital? Who
Well,
wants
can
to
I ask, did you think about having any blind parents like on that list, or like any blind friends who were parents, kind of as resources?
Yeah, actually I did. And what initially happened was I was so like kicked up about just all of these questions, and really interpreting it as doubts on my ability, that I like sent her like documents of everything related to like being a blind parent.
Sure.
And I signed up for all these trainings and parenting classes, and ultimately what I was really surprised, of course during the process she has to be very straight faced, very objective and stuff, but at the end of it, when she saw I was kind of really spinning my wheels, just really trying to prove to her that I could be a parent, she was like, Dina, don't sign up for any more stuff. She had actually, I don't know if it was a family member, but she said, I have been around a blind person who was a teacher, and I saw how she handled her classrooms. And I also have a family member who's blind. So she did have a family member. So through whatever interactions she had with those individuals, they left a positive impression on her. She couldn't convey to me until the very end, but she did feel comfortable with what I, had in my home, and needing to pass all the inspections. She did have really good feedback. Hey, you have really great experiences with kids that are, 4 and older. You really should get some exposure to young babies and toddlers. And as a blind person, I wasn't really given very many opportunities to take care of a baby on my own. As a teenager, serving as a babysitter, like a lot of other girls or kids would. So honestly, I was, going to friends saying, hey, can I babysit for free? And they were like, hey, what's your schedule like on Wednesday?
I know.
So
do you want to do an overnight? Do you want to practice staying up?
So actually I did. I actually got a chance to babysit or be a mother's helper for a mom that had 5 children, and she had twins, a newborn set of twins. And so she was just so happy to get a shower.
I bet.
She was so happy whenever I came. So but it was a really good process. It was a sobering process. I had to find people who would be willing to be guardians, for Kaleb. in case something happened to me. And that's a real conversation, you know, to have with somebody. So the home study was challenging. I think a lot of my own history came up, you know, intermingled with the questions, probably more so just because I'm blind, and we all face discrimination, and we all face these really negative experiences with misconceptions or people's fears. But thankfully it wasn't a problem, and having a good, you know, references, but also knowing that I needed to build a bigger village, you know, that my neighbor, she's awesome. I had a perception going into the process that she was going to be like a grandma, you know, to my son. But with her being a 71-year-old woman, she didn't want me to go into that process assuming that that would be the case. And that was a real conversation we had to have, but that led to me really actively pursuing relationships with both blind and sighted parents, which, you know, have been really great.
No, can you tell us about how you were introduced to the baby's mother, and kind of more about sort of the, you know, the whole process, the whole journey that you went through?
So, okay. So the agency I went with, they partner with like a publishing or marketing agency, because a lot of adoptive families, hopeful adoptive families, have to create like a profile book. And it's basically like a little magazine of advertising who you are as a person, and you can take all the nice pictures and stuff. So initially they wanted to take out the pictures with my cane and my dog. So we actually had to have a conversation to say that this is who I am. I have a cane, I have a, you know, I use a guide dog. So it was a book that was given to my son's birth mom with other families who had books. I even created like a Facebook webpage in case some mother out there would want to find me. But her and my son's birth father actually looked at the book, and they were happy with what they saw. And when I got the phone call, it was actually January 3rd of 2019. And I was like, what the hell? You know, like, they're calling me. At this point, I was technically unemployed because we were on furlough. So I'm already emotional. But you know, I was like, did you read that paragraph that says that I am blind? Because I had a paragraph that said, hey, I am, one of my characteristics is that I'm blind, but you know the spiel that we do kind of on our dating profile, you know.
Hold on one second. I have some thoughts. Hey guys, you need to go back into your fort. All right. If you guys keep coming out, then you're not going to be able to sleep in your fort, and you're going to have to sleep in your bed. I know. You know what? Don't worry about Josie. Worry about yourself. You take care of you. Okay, why don't you, can you go get Dad and see if Dad can test you guys back into your fort? Please, come on. Okay, go with Leo. Oh, goodness.
Hold up, how many children do you have?
9. No, I'm just kidding.
You're not Lisa.
No, 2. Leo is 7 and Josephine is 3.
Oh, and he wants her to be in a fort. Okay.
Yeah, no, they're sleeping in the fort. They sleep in the fort on weekends. And then Greg goes out into the wood shop, and I'm like, Greg. Which, I mean, to be fair, I'm sitting here on Zoom. It's not exactly like I'm, you know, like feeding the homeless at this minute, but like, I mean, like,
still.
Okay. Yeah. I'm educating fellow blind parents. Hello. Okay. Anyway, go on.
But
literally, as soon as this is over, I'm gonna come downstairs, and there's gonna be like Legos and play food everywhere, and so I just know it's happening, and I'm just being zen with that for the time being.
Right.
But yeah, so I got the call January 3rd. They saw my profile. I wanted to confirm they, you know, saw the part that I was blind. And I asked the adoption worker, I was like, hey, are they sure? Are they really sure? Because I didn't want to get my hopes up, you know,
Yeah.
and get ghosted, you know. But they said, yeah. And they wanted to talk the next day. So we set up a conference call with them. And so I talked to her, I said, hey, are you, again, I wanted to lay my own fears about, you know, about them knowing I was blind, but on their side, they were making a much bigger decision. They were making a decision of who's going to be the mother of, you know, their child. So, so we talked, and what it came down to it is they saw the things that I had been involved with scouting and, you know, volunteering and, you know, whatever. And those were the things that they wanted for their son, you know. Not to say I had to be this picture perfect person, but, you know, what we know in the adoption community is that birth mothers choose adoptive families for a lot of different reasons. It, you know, part of it, I know she loves that Kaleb is growing up with a dog, you know. She's a guide dog, but she's a dog. You know, it could be that, you know, some parents have said that their birth moms chose them because, you know, there was musical instruments around the house, you know. So blindness was not a factor. It was more of what she wanted. I think it helped being transparent with her, and saying, hey, we're going to do things a bit differently, you know, sometimes, but my primary goal and prayer for him is to have an awesome childhood and to grow up into a really nice young man. I hope. You know, so that was the commitment that we made to each other. So we got a chance to get to know each other during her pregnancy. I was matched, I think, during like the 3rd month, and then he was born in May, and she wanted me to be there at the birth. So I was thankfully there for a lot of her ultrasound appointments, prenatal appointments, and then I got a call while my parents and I were at a Dollar Tree store. Hey, come to the hospital, she's in labor. And I was there. I got a chance to assist with labor and delivery and cut the cord, and actually got a chance to do skin to skin. So it was as close to like a delivery experience without actually physically delivering my son.
Yeah.
No, didn't you name the baby Kaleb? And wasn't that after the baby's dad, or that had some significance to the mom, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So so I had always wanted to name a child by naming Kaleb. Because, you know, I consider myself a Christian, and I really love the story of Kaleb and Joshua, who were the 2 scouts in the Promised Land. And, you know, Kaleb's name in a biblical sense is in a biblical sense means wholeheartedly faithful. So I thought that would be a wonderful characteristic for a son. So when I brought the idea up to her, his birth mom, she was like, I love that. Can we name him with a K? And I was like, yeah. So I was really lucky in that we both came up with the name, because the letter K has really deep meaning for her, because of family tradition. And I got the name of Kaleb because of my sense of faith. And then he actually has his middle name from his birth father. So it was really, really nice, really sweet. But also, I know it's a really unique experience. A lot of people who go through adoption may not have the opportunity to be part of the birth, but everyone has their own story that makes it just as special. So yeah.
And it's a difficult time, I imagine, for the birth mom too. And you know.
Oh yeah, and that was the hard part.
That was consideration.
That was really hard.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just because, and that was really hard. I mean, to be with her and see her make a decision that was permanent, I mean, you know, I know my biggest fear as an adoptive mom is that someone would come along and want to take him back. But she had to make a decision to let go. And I can't imagine that. And to have to be with her in those feelings was really difficult, but it was such a powerful decision. But we have what's considered an open adoption. And right now, right now, the thought in the adoption community is that open relationships or open adoptions are important, and they're valuable. They're hard because you have to deal and address your feelings as an adoptive parent and their feelings as a birth family. But when you talk to adults who were adopted, their sense of identity as a person is really impacted by how much information and how adoption was presented to them at an early age. So the approach now is what level of openness you can have, whether it's sending pictures or having visits. It's important to share that information with them at an age appropriate manner. So
Sure. Well, and I imagine just for the moms too, I mean, it is a traumatic situation. And, you know, just, my kids. Okay. I hear another coming up. I'm sorry.
Tears.
Okay, guys. No, but I mean, as you know, the mom too. I mean, I imagine that having an open adoption allows her to know that her child is safe and she knows that her kid is happy. And do you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't just think, oh my goodness, he's out there somewhere. Where is he? Like he knows, right? I mean,
yeah. And that's the really great thing. Like, I feel really lucky. I can ask her some questions that, and a big part of having an open adoption is having access to family medical history. One of the things that I found out is, you know, he has his feet prorate, or at least turn in. And it was something that, you know, I was able to ask her, hey, does anybody else in the family have this? Is this a unique characteristic I need to watch out for? And it was great to be able to share that information. You know, certain things that he does, you know, he likes to cross his feet, you know, when he's sleeping, but that's something his dad does, you know. So we have a really good open relationship. You know, it's a journey, so it may change over time, but at least right now, within what's called the adoption triad, we know that we are like pursuing the best for Kaleb.
Now, how much contact do you have with Kaleb's birth mom?
So we text a couple of times a week, you know, send them pictures. We've done FaceTime. We have had visits with them, but prior to COVID. But you know, and you know, sometimes it's I mean, just being real honest, sometimes it can bring up a lot of emotions for me. Sometimes I feel like I have to present myself as this perfect person, and he has to be this perfect child. You know, we all know toddlers, you know, if you wake them up from a nap, that is not going to be pretty.
And you're like, I promise he's happy. I didn't just beat him.
So, you know, sometimes, you know, I need to be in the headspace, but also, you know, I know she has to be. And sometimes when I've offered, you know, for a visit, she may not be ready. And that's okay. You know, that's okay. You know, we're in this together for however long, you know. So, and that's something through the training classes and with meeting other adoptive families, they tell you that, hey, sometimes, you know, the relationship changes over time, and that's okay. There's no fault either way. The point is that he knows or will know is that the decision for him to be placed for adoption was made out of love. It was not out of haste. There was a lot of thought brought into it. He was not abandoned, and of course we would love to have been able to address the reasons why adoption needed to be considered in the first place, but because it was considered, it wasn't done as haphazardly. It was done with love, and that's my hope and prayer, that he would grow to understand that. But I know it's going to be a lot of interesting conversations as he grows. I remember when I first came home with him. So we were in Arkansas. I flew home with him at day 14. I was able to go to court to finalize his adoption at day 10, which Arkansas has a really short termination period or finalization period. In Maryland, it's 30 days. I would lose my mind if I had to wait 30 days. Yeah. No, actually, it's 30 days for termination of rights. 6 months you have to wait before you can finalize. But it's different in each state. But anyways, so
I guess, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice for blind single parents?
For any blind parent, whether you're married or you're single, I think really challenging this notion that you have to be this perfect person to be a parent. I think the key component of what you need is love and perseverance and a bit of tenacity to figure things out, because that's what you're going to need. You're going to need love, because love is going to drive you to wake up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning consecutively on end.
Are you sure that was love, or fear that if we let him starve, we go to jail?
A little of both.
Yeah, I can't comment.
You're gonna need perseverance, so that's definitely, because I've noticed that you kind of have these peaks and valleys of I first had to learn how to handle a newborn, and then I had to learn how to handle a baby that could crawl, and that stuck around for a while, and then I had a baby that could walk, and so it's gonna take time to push through the things that you don't know until you figure it out, or rely on others to help you figure it out, and then just hanging in. So I know for myself, I struggled a lot with feeling like I had to be perfect, and that every single challenge that I faced was just because I was blind. But in talking with both blind parents and sighted moms out there, everybody is struggling to figure it out. I think the fear that we do have is that other people are looking at us and assuming we cannot. But in the adoption process, a lot of people like to say your baby is out there. And I learned that my baby was out there. It took some time to find, but my baby was out there. And being able to stick with it, it did happen. So yeah, nobody's perfect, and you spin a lot of wheels feeling like you have to be perfect. So that's what I would say.
I just want to add here that Dena's so right. You don't have to be the perfect parent. You only have to be the perfect blind person. So let's
exactly. Yes.
Yes.
So it's okay if you're not the perfect parent, as long as you're the perfect blind person.
Perfect blind person. Yes.
The only thing that matters.
You can pick one. Pick one.
You have to be one or the other.
Yes.
You gotta have you either have to have great cane skills, or you have to know how to bake. You have to have one or the other, because if you don't have either, then sorry.
Yeah,
it's not good.
But when you achieve perfect blind personhood, you're perfect at everything.
Yes.
True.
So
tell me when you find that
standard. This is the standard to which we all must strive for.
Yes, everyone. I want you to look at the three of us here. This is what you're hoping to achieve. This is This is what you should be thinking about every day as you,
Yes.
as you work on your personal growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stacy and I are the standard to which you all should hold
No,
yourself.
actually, I think that's Dina. You and I are, look, it's more of it's like a don't be like us, be like Dina.
Like Dina. Yeah, exactly. We should make a t-shirt that says that.
Exactly. Don't be like us, be like Dina.
Like Dina.
Okay, so final question. So I guess what would be then your biggest piece of advice to blind parents who are thinking about adopting or who are open to it, people who have an interest in adoption?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. I would say make the choice, in that it is a choice to do this. You're not coming in as a savior to these kids. You're choosing to build your family through adoption. The reality is also that adoption does cost, has expenses to it. So I would really work with whether it's a volunteer or a friend to look at your budget, look at your expenses, because that's a real thing. I had to figure it out.
Now, is foster care, isn't it? My understanding is adopting through the foster care system is kind of the least expensive way to do it.
Yeah,
and then often when you do that, your kid is like eligible for Medicaid and free lunch.
Yes,
and yeah.
Yes. So that is the case for foster care. But you definitely have to know what you're getting into when you're choosing foster care. Because, in that case, adoption through foster care, there's a reason for those kids being in that system. And you have to be prepared, for what that is. So that would be the case for whether you go through foster care, domestic adoption, or international adoption. You have to be open to learning lots of stuff.
And frankly, that's the same with, giving birth to children biologically. There is no, oh, well, gee, I don't want a kid who has any, unhappiness or any issues. Like, well, maybe you just want to get a puppy because you could do anything. You could adopt a child internationally. You could do, go to a sperm bank. You could have a child, in a marriage. You could adopt through the foster care system, and all of these things could bring you great joy or be a struggle, or most likely both. It's
yeah. So that's where it's just, there's so much to learn. It changes you, who you are. So I would say, knowing that you're choosing adoption, go with it with an open heart, open mind, be willing to change. So if you are going to adopt transracially, meaning you're choosing to adopt a child who has an ethnicity that's different from yours, learn about it, build your community to match that, but it's a beautiful process, either way, so yeah, that would be my big advice. But also, hone in on, the really good parts of who you are as a person, because you got to buckle up for the adoption process, because you got to hold on to what's good. And just go for it. Don't feel like you have to be this perfect person, because you don't. And just take all your naps and get your sleep now, because it'll change when the child comes.
Yep. Yes.
I was like, what did I do with myself? Why didn't I sleep more before Kaleb?
I often think, like, man, I had so much free time before. Like, why didn't I learn like 7 languages? And I had so much time. Like I could have written a book or something,
Right. I know. Yeah. The other day I was just like, we had so much free time. Like, sometimes the thought of having that much free time is amazing, but I'm also like, I feel like, what would I do? Because now it's just like every minute's taken up with something.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I could handle going back to like not really having much to do.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm so happy to be a mom during a pandemic than being like a single person, at home without during a pandemic because there's just so much, coolness that comes from picking up peas off of the floor or doing endless amounts of laundry that are not your own.
See, I feel like I was busy before I had kids, like when I was single, but it was all focused on me. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
exactly.
it was different because like, you're busy, but it's all about like, oh, I'm going to the gym and then I'm going to go get coffee and I'm going to meet friends and then I'm going to go home and watch a movie. Where now it's just like, oh my God, I have like an hour between when the kids go to bed and the Daily Show. Like, what do I do with this chunk of time? Like, like, choose wisely because you can only do one thing.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. That's why it's like, if a show sucks on Netflix or whatever, you have 10 minutes to get my attention with that show. If you can't do it in 10 minutes, I'm not wasting my hour of free time.
I'll give it an episode. Okay. Bad blind mom question. What shows have you binged during the pandemic?
Yes, great question.
Ooh,
I'll share first. And we'll talk about new ones, not ones that like, okay, for me, I always binge watch Parks and Rec for like the 95th time. But for me, it was Shameless and Schitt's Creek, The Last Czars, and then of course season 4 of The Crown.
Oh, I gotta watch those. Huh? Okay.
Bridget.
I'm the same way with books. Like I do so much that I have to actually stop and think like, what have I watched? The Crown, season 4 of The Crown for sure. That was one of mine. Oh, this is an old one, but it's a pretty good throwback. I did binge through Dawson's Creek.
Oh my goodness.
Like now watching it again as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, like why was this show so great back in the day? But I stuck with it and I binged through the whole 6 seasons again, and now I don't have to do that again.
Okay. Let's see. So for the dark dystopia moment.
Yes.
Not to say we need any more of that. We have enough of that in the real life. But it took me some time to find Handmaid's Tale. So I find myself, saying praise be.
Blessed be the fruit.
I said praise be long before that show. I've never seen that show, but
it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yes. Let's see, A Different World.
Yeah,
that was the spinoff.
With like
that was
that whole
yes. Oh my goodness, I'm a Star Trek fan, so I'm watching all the Star Trek series.
So is my husband.
So Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, all of it. So I got a 2-year-old, so there's not much time. So those would be my 3 shows.
Yeah, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood.
Yes, exactly.
So I'll say this. Okay, everyone who knows me knows this. Before, Hamilton came out on Disney Plus on like July 4th. It is played in our house 5 days a week since then. So first Greg loved it, and then I started liking it, and then Leo started like saying, "Mom, are you gonna want me to turn on Hamilton?" Like, Leo, come on. So then he just wanted to turn it on. Now Josephine is the one who asked for it like every day, and like it's not all and watch it, but it's like the soundtrack of our pandemic. Like when we look back on the pandemic, and it's so funny because like Greg and I know the words completely. Leo knows them like surprisingly well. Like when I hear him singing these big words, I'm like, well done, child. And Josephine, it's so cute and silly. Like, she loves Here Comes the General and Washington on Your Side. However,
That's hilarious.
I'm afraid, because she also likes to go around the house going, how does the bastard orphan son of a whore? You know she's gonna go to school. You know, because you know how does a bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman, and you know Josephine's gonna like sing that someday.
Yes,
so we try to tell her, we try to distract her. Like when it comes on, Greg and I are like, "Hey, Josephine, come over here!" Like,
oh my god.
Oh my
have you
goodness.
seen Hamilton, Dina?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to
Yes.
make sure that you were on the level, and
Oh yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I am
Ross and I have seen it live.
that's impressive.
Was that with the original cast?
No, unfortunately, no. It was the actual Broadway touring cast though. So
Ooh.
it was really good. Like we were in love with the music as well. We listened to the soundtrack for a long time. And then when they toured to Omaha, we would have bought tickets, to be honest. But we actually won tickets.
Seriously?
And we had, it was amazing. And we had amazing seats. Yeah. And it was, I mean, live. And again, this is an actual, like, these are Broadway performers too. So it wasn't, like high school production. Nothing wrong with high school productions. Just saying.
Oh yeah, I've been to plenty of those.
But it was, I mean, live was just a whole other level. It was
I would love if they had more, I don't know, like you could like pause the play and then have the descriptions of what's going on, because the descriptive track wasn't all that fulfilling.
Yeah,
but
on the
because
Disney
there's so much
yeah.
content,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll all go get to see it when our children are playing it in high school. When Leo is Lafayette and
Right.
Eliza and Kaleb is, Hamilton, and we'll all be watching our children.
Yes.
we'll be the moms in the rehearsal, the umpteenth rehearsal.
There you go.
I have a performing background and I studied vocal performance, and so obviously like I'm really, really into this stuff. And my youngest, Duncan, we call him Ham because he is just so theatrical and he's always just doing really dramatic things. And his new thing recently is he's obsessed with New York City. And he's like, he wants to go there. And like last night we were watching, NBC had this Broadway special, and they had different Broadway casts performing. And so he was watching it with me. I'm like, Duncan, these people, they're in New York City right now. And he's like, Mom, I just love New York City. So I was like, well, maybe one day you'll be performing there.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, that would be, I'm just happy if I can get Kaleb on a bus.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. In reality, yes. Like he's the same child also has been eating paper lately. So, our expectations are a little low at the moment.
All right, ladies. Oh, by the way, Fiddler on the Roof is also like the T'Pol version. And the 70s version is also on Netflix now. So,
I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh, it's on Netflix now. Mm-hmm. The 1970s.
Yeah.
It works well if you watch The Last Tsar. It's kind of like The Last Tsar.
Yes.
It's like 6 episodes. Dina, it's a little porny. Not like porny, but like it's like, you're going to hear some noises that you didn't really want, but it's so good. It's really good. So it's about the last Tsar. It's like the Russian revolution, like the last Tsar Nicholas. So it takes place from like the early 1890s to, 1917 or 1918 when it happened. But then if you watch that and then you watch Fiddler on the Roof, you kind of see that same time period through a different dynamic by because they're Jewish, and they're people that the Tsar had persecuted.
Yep.
And so it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting, like you watch The Last Czars and you see that family, and then you watch Fiddler and you're like, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, cool.
juxtaposition. Yes.
I mean, or you could just watch something fun like Different World, but you know, if you want to.
If you really want to get dystopian, watch The Last Czar.
Yeah, that's true. No, yes, The Last Czar is very dystopian. Like the scenes with like Rasputin, they just did not need to be in there. Like, that's like they just did not need to be there.
I know. It's like we know this. I didn't need to see it.
Right. I mean, it's so good, Dina. It's not like, I mean, it's a good, it's like a porn with a story.
Okay, cool. I'm down for that.
It's a little bit better than the Pizza Boy, you know?
Yeah.
It has more of a narrative arc.
You gotta watch it though. It's really good. I promise. It's genuinely good.
This is what happens when we film this late. It just devolves.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So, what shows have you been YouTubing or Huluing or whatever it is you do? What Amazon Prime, all the things. What shows have you been binging during the pandemic? And if you have any questions about adoption, or what it is like to be an adoptive parent, I'm sure, please feel free to ask them below, and we will get in touch with Dina, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer you best she could. Good night.
Thank you so much, Dina. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me here.
Of course.
Yeah, it was great.